move and a tear so far, and you can see her on the left side of your screen.
There's the Gyarados.
Joseph Ugarte on the right side of the screen. Fiona has that Gyarados and Trico with her. I'm loving the plush game. A lot of our masters don't bring too many plushes on stream, whereas those junior finals are fun. But look at the achievements here. Vancouver Regional Top 16, Collinsville Regional Top 16, and NAIC Top 32 back in 2018. Lots of talent, and take a look at that team.
Yeah, the Max Caliber in Chi-Yu. Gyarados, she said, was her MVP. Really, I think Ting-Lu was the MVP, especially in that stream match, as it hit 4 of its 5 fissures that it selected in that set. So you could say one thing, that Gyarados is the MVP, but then the actions prove otherwise. In this type of matchup, I don't know how great Gyarados will be against the Defiant King Gambit, so you might have to go for some of your other strategies, like Chi-Yu might be a little more important. And then on Joe's side, a player with no need for the introduction, but we'll give him one anyway. Last weekend made it to the 2nd place finish at the Charlotte Regional Championships. Top Cut Worlds this last summer in London, making it to top 32. And then back-to-back ICs last season with the top 4s at NASC and EUSC. Also the Portland Regional Champion from back in the Sun and Moon days.
Yeah, and looking at this team here for Joe, again, that King Gambit, we've been talking about it a lot, and that Terra Flying is going to be really nice to have. It pairs so well with that Garchomp, also pairs well with the Talonflame. I like the opportunity that Joe has for speed here, especially because Ting-Lu is a Pokemon that runs on the slower side, but it does stop damage from those 2 big attackers in the Flutter Mane and in that Iron Bundle. But Garchomp, definitely a threat, I think, right now as well.
Yeah, I think Joe is kind of leading or keeping the brigade of Iron Bundle alive in Regulation B right now, because a lot of people have kind of tossed it to the wayside, saying, I don't want to play with Iron Bundle anymore, it's not that great. Joe trying to prove here in this match that it will still be great. And then there is the King Gambit that we've just really been hyping up all of Team Preview.
Yeah, King Gambit, Flutter Mane, plus Baxcalibur, Ting-Lu. And the Baxcalibur instantly threatens that King Gambit from going for Terra Flying, but then the Stomping Tantrum from the Ting-Lu threatens it from not going Terra Flying. Protect, though, Moonblast into that Dark-type Ting-Lu brings it down to under half of its HP, and Iron Head firing right back into the Ting-Lu as well. Not able to do the damage that it needs to. Heavy Slam does so much damage. This Flutter Mane definitely trained to handle that hit.
Iron Head flinch would have been gigantic for Joe, because then you don't take any of that damage, and now Flutter Mane is in a position that any type of damage will be able to knock it out. Obviously, Baxcalibur has access to Ice Shard, which is a priority attack that would be able to take it down. Is Joe willing to sacrifice his Flutter Mane this early on in the game just to try to force some damage onto the Baxcalibur? Let's find out.
Amoonguss switching in here for that Ting-Lu. You're not going to be taking a Heavy Slam this turn. A Terastallization, though, is coming up right out of the gate on turn 2. It is the Baxcalibur for Fiona. Terra Water definitely trying to maybe not take some big, strong Iron Heads for super effective damage from that King Gambit on the opposite side of the field. Ice Shard, easy knockout on that Flutter Mane, had just a little bit of HP left. This King Gambit, the only thing able to move so far, and it goes for the Iron Head into the Amoonguss, does actually some pretty respectable damage as well.
Yeah, not falling also for the bait of Terra Water there, because Iron Head would have been resisted. However, Pokemon that does not mind seeing Terra Water Baxcalibur is the Iron Bundle, thanks to its Freeze Dry. It's an ice attack that is super effective into water types. Now, yes, Amoonguss can redirect the Freeze Dry away. However, Amoonguss is a grass type. It is also weak to ice. So Joe has kind of pinned Fiona a little bit in this spot that one of these Pokemon will not appreciate a Freeze Dry.
Ting-Lu coming out here, not going to be redirecting, is instead just going to get that Vessel of Ruin. Freeze Dry into the Baxcalibur does not do over half, thanks to the Ting-Lu coming in. Glaive Rush from the Baxcalibur into the Iron Bundle, not enough to knock out just yet, but Assurance from the King Gambit to double target. Some big physical 1-2 punch there, knocks out that Baxcalibur, no longer able to get a big priority move off if need be.
Fiona thought she had the upper hand by bringing Ting-Lu in to lower the special attack of the Iron Bundle on Joe's side, but because of Assurance doubling up in damage after Iron Bundle had already hit, the Excalibur. That was enough to secure the KO for King Gambit. So now Fiona bringing in her own Amoonguss in this spot. You do have access to trying to redirect any attacks towards your Ting Lu to keep it around. Ironhead, as we saw, actually was a kind of solid damage into the Amoonguss the last time. Not like it would be a 2-hit KO or anything like that, but it still does, with a Iron or Freeze Dry, would do more over time.
Not enough to knock out though, because, oh, the Ironhead will still handle it, but the Ironhead is now no longer going onto that Amoonguss, is still able to get at least the damage that it's got now. Goes for the Pollen Puff. It was the side Pollen Puff, though. Not able to help heal up its partner, and in comes Gyarados with a big Defiant boost for the King Gambit.
Fiona was expecting to be a 1-in-1, have Iron Bundle hit one, King Gambit hit the other slot. And so Joe made a safe play. It's something that I think less experienced VGC trainers would really appreciate following that turn. If you think Amoonguss might Rage Powder, you can still target the other slot. Like, don't just, oh, he's gonna Rage Powder, I'll hit Amoonguss anyway. Just hit the other slot in case your opponent kind of outthinks themselves and doesn't click it. You get rewarded. The forfeit that early, and Joe is one win away from the finals.
Joe preserved a lot of information in that game. Fiona, I think, was trying to preserve the information that she had left, but there was not a whole lot there. I think she knows that there was definitely a change in game plan. Fiona was able to get the win on Joe and Swiss, so she probably has a game plan that she didn't adhere to this time, or Joe adjusted to, and now she may have to kind of go back to the brain and kind of think about what she did in Swiss that worked for her.
Well, I think the big adjustment from Joe, we didn't see that set, but we saw in this game the absolute pressure he provided onto Ting Lu. Get Ting Lu off the field immediately. Iron Bundle and Flutter Mane are two of my strongest Pokemon. They are special attackers where their damage is mitigated just by Ting Lu being on the field. So if I go for Freeze Dry Assurance, or even a Dazzling Gleam and an Assurance, or Dazzling Gleam Iron Head, some type of attack into the Ting Lu to bring it low, it means not only can Fiona not lower your special attack, but she also can't click the Fissure if Ting Lu gets knocked out early. So now Joe has revealed that strategy. Get Ting Lu knocked out as fast as possible. What is Fiona's adjustment?
Bring Chi-Yu. No, that's just a fast answer. That's just a fast answer. But if you bring your Ting Lu, maybe you go and terrastalize it into Terra Water and you choose that as your terrastalization option, but then you're still threatened by that Iron Bundle. I think for Fiona, it's getting the Iron Bundle off the field is the biggest problem, because it handles so much of your team so well, and it's one of those Pokemon that she doesn't have a really good, super effective way to hit it besides maybe a Heavy Slam from Ting Lu, which doesn't want to terrastalize because then it takes a much faster, pretty strong Freeze Dry. You do have the Vessel of Ruin, so that does mitigate the damage that you're taking in return. You could also then possibly pair that with the Amoonguss again and try and maybe side Pollen Puff, have that go off, but Talonflame Garchomp is a much speedier answer here. Excalibur Amoonguss, though.
All right, Joe switching it up, saying I might have stolen a game with that game one, that strategy, so I'm not going to go for the same thing this time around. Adjusting to what used to be Talonflame Great Tusk is now Talonflame Garchomp. A lot faster, a Pokemon traditionally outspeeding Chi-Yu and some of the Pokemon in those speed tiers, so that's why it's been much stronger. If you want to go for Earthquake, we just saw the Gyarados being hovered there to take that as a flying type, but you can have Tailwind, and that would be able to negate any of the speed boosts. Like if Chi-Yu was brought in the match, it is Choice Scarf. Tailwind would mean your Pokemon are still faster than it.
Gyarados switching in here, getting the Intimidate down. Brave Bird priority thanks to that Gale Wings into Amoonguss. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage here, especially thanks to that Intimidate, is at least meaning you are not going to get any Tailwind up, but this Earthquake is only going to hit into this Amoonguss. A great switch here. One thing I really like is that Joseph did not terrastalize this turn. It looked very much like an easy turn to terrastalize into that Terra Fire in the face of Excalibur.
Yeah, and it looks like Amoonguss is going to end up pretty much where it was right before the Earthquake and put Garchomp to sleep. Now Joe's forced to be asleep next turn on the Garchomp, and that's not a position he wants to be in, because if you switch it out, you don't start the clock ticking on the sleep turns, so you might just want to waste a turn, but if you just leave it on the field, you are threatened by attacks.
Yeah, exactly, right? You are still threatened by attacks, but this does mean Fiona can resend send in the Baxcalibur for far more comfortably. The Talonflame, though, switching out for Joe, bringing in the Iron Bundle. We saw that this was a menace last game, saying I may be 11 in usage, but I'm still incredibly tough to deal with. Quark Drive speed boost on that Iron Bundle means it's going to be the fastest thing to move in this entire field. Amoonguss, though, switches out here. No need to go to sleep. Baxcalibur can come in, can do some big damage, but it is still going to have to contend with that Iron Bundle. And then does Joe make the choice to terrestrialize later? This waterfall into Garchomp, critical hit, neutral damage. You take some rough skin, but that is a really nice hit.
That's a lot of damage because of the crit. Now Garchomp is in a very tough spot. It is Terra Fire on Joe's Garchomp if you did want to terrestrialize to resist Ice Shard on Baxcalibur's side, because this turn, that turn he went to sleep, there is a chance he can wake up here. But if you go Terra Fire, then if you don't wake up, you're in a really bad spot because you're wasting your Terra and you get knocked out anyway. But Iron Bundle is kind of primed here. Fiona has 3 Terra Water Pokemon on her team and Gyarados, who is 4 times weak to Freeze Dry. It's kind of like the Iron Bundle is in a great spot, and that's why if you have Ting Lu, like we saw Fiona did bring Ting Lu in this matchup, you need to kind of hinder that special attack on Iron Bundle because it can really kind of 1v4 your team with Freeze Dry.
Ting Lu coming in, that Vessel of Ruin, a huge play here to try and lower that output from the Iron Bundle. Freeze Dry targeting into Ting Lu with that Assault Vest. It handles it so comfortably. No terrestrialization, no wake up from that sleep as well, meaning that this Baxcalibur with Glaive Rush actually targeting into that Iron Bundle. It's not enough to get the knockout, but now it's an Ice Shard range.
Yeah. Fiona banking on Garchomp, staying asleep that turn, working out very well for her because the Glaive Rush into Iron Bundle will be able to bring it to the point that Ice Shard should knock it out here. Garchomp, again, the more turns you give it a chance to wake up, then it's eventually going to wake up and you can go for Earthquake or any type of attack here. But Ting Lu, by being able to switch in and not take so much damage like it did the last game, in game 1 it took way more damage on the early turns, it's still so healthy that it really hinders this Iron Bundle's damage output. And if you're Joe, do you maybe try to switch out Iron Bundle to save it for later? No, I mean, the Protect is also kind of safe.
Yeah, Protect definitely making sense here. You may not want to lose it. Baxcalibur also protecting that Glaive Rush, meaning that you would take double damage this turn. A very common play. Another turn asleep here from Garchomp.
Wow.
So that's actually huge to have not taken any damage. Stomping Tantrum into Garchomp, it's not enough to knock it out, but here's the play, right? It's just Ice Shard time, baby.
Well, now you can only Ice Shard 1, though, right? It's not a spread Ice Shard. So you either Ice Shard the Iron Bundle or the Garchomp. I think the correct answer is Garchomp because you don't want it to wake up and wreak havoc. But now Iron Bundle is faster and can go for a Freeze Dry.
Yeah, Freeze Dry into your Baxcalibur here. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage.
That's Ting Lu.
Really nice then from that Ting Lu. Heavy Slam, critical hit not mattering with whatever is left on that Iron Bundle. Joseph has the Talonflame in back, which is Brave Birded, so it does not have its Gale Wings. And then depending on what he has in back, if it's something like that Amoonguss, there's not going to be a ton of offensive output here. It is the King Gambit, though, which is a really interesting play, but no terrestrialization from anybody yet. And once again, that same play.
Shoutouts to King Gambit, the opportunist, and he's going to need to find an opportunity to come back in this game on King Gambit. You don't really want to turn into a flying type in front of Baxcalibur, right? The Ice Shard and would be super effective into your slot there. But most of the damage Joe did in the previous game, he got the win, was through the help of King Gambit. So if he's going to want to win this set 2-0, it's going to be off the back of King Gambit.
Yep, Terra Water here to get rid of that some big weaknesses from that Iron Head on the King Gambit. Will-O-Wisp down into the Ting Lu will mitigate the output that its offensive power can have and would take some bigger defensive hits as well. It would have that lower defense. Icicle Spear from Baxcalibur into Talonflame. We have one, I think, is this Baxcalibur holding that loaded dice? Let me double check. Yes, it is. So it's going to hit 4 or 5 times.
That's 4?
That's 4. It hits the 5th time as well. So that Talonflame now knocked out of the competition for Game 2, meaning that it is this King Gambit against some Pokemon that can do some big damage. Iron Head into Baxcalibur, thanks to that defensive terrestrialization. Not going to happen. Ruination misses, though, on that King Gambit.
So that's a perfect turn from Fiona there because now that you had Talonflame and King Gambit left, you don't really care about Ting Lu lowering people's special attack, right? It doesn't matter. So to go for the Will-O-Wisp into the Ting Lu slot to lower its damage, instead of double targeting Baxcalibur for, say, Brave Bird and Assurance into that slot, meant that she was so safe to get that attack for free.
A Ting Lu flinch from that Iron Head this turn. You're taking some more burn damage as well. Protect from that Baxcalibur meant it wasn't going to have any offensive output. Interesting that I saw it went for Ruination again. I think it's a smart call because you're kind of trying to call if there's a Terra flying in the face of something like a Fissure or a Stomping Tantrum, but having the Ruination miss meant that the Stomping Tantrum would have done more damage, so then that might have been kind of a play and a call. Looks like the switch out here for Baxcalibur, though. You're protecting that. You send out Amoonguss. Amoonguss can side Pollen Puff, can do a couple of different things.
And let's see if Joe calls this this switch, I should say. No, the Iron Head just to knock out Ting Lu. So Ting Lu's no more of a threat, no chance at Fissure in this game. What's good for Joe is Baxcalibur has Ice and Dragon attacks into this Steel type. Now, you do have to worry if you want to be able to one-hit the Amoonguss, you need to turn into a Flying type. But if you're a Flying type, you're now weak to Ice.
Yes, exactly, Joe. Does Joseph feel like he needs to make the gamble to knock out this Amoonguss? And it's the Terra flying here on that King Gambit. You need to have enough damage to take care of the Amoonguss. That is a huge threat. But then what is your answer for this Baxcalibur? Because we've seen the Iron Head has not done nearly as much damage as Joe needs it to. Icicle Spear going to hit a bunch of times, and that should be a knockout, I think, maybe with 4, but 5 should guarantee it. You hit the 4th one here. You have actually, there it is, that full 4 hits. Fiona, critical hit, brought this into a game 3.
And the loaded dice are in her favor at that point anyway, if you don't get the crit, that it's brought so low that you can then Ice Shard the following turn. So Fiona, a great job in game 2 adjusting there. It was essentially down to a 2v1 because she could never bring Gyarados back onto the field while King Gambit was there, or you would have given it a Defiant boost. And I think Fiona kind of just taking advantage of Joe hyper focusing into her Baxcalibur, going for the Terra Water to resist Iron Head, and then you pin Joe in a position. You need to stay a Steel type to win the matchup against Baxcalibur, but you need to be a Flying type to beat my Amoonguss. So it really was just no great answer for Joe in that spot.
It was such a smart pin. It was such a high level pin from Fiona to send in the Amoonguss and say, you got to pick one. And you're not going to do a lot of damage onto the Baxcalibur unless you are Terra flying with a Terra Blast, right? Like, that was probably your best answer for damage beyond maybe going for an Assurance, but you don't have another Pokemon to hit it first, and it's not like you're taking any recoil damage if you're that Baxcalibur. So Fiona, knowing that if you send in that Amoonguss and you kind of bait that King Gambit into going for that Terra flying, it makes your life a lot easier. And I really like the adjustments that were made. I liked the Ting Lu in back to switch into the Iron Bundle. Does Joe make the same call with the 4 he brings?
I think Joe really needs to take better care of his Iron Bundle. As we mentioned in the last game, there are 3 Terra Waters and a Gyarados 4 times a week to freeze dry. You can't take 90% of your HP willy-nilly for no reason because Ting Lu switches in and your freeze dry is not even a 2-hit KO because of its Ruin ability. So in this matchup, if Joe wants to win, he needs to get more out of the Iron Bundle.
Baxcalibur, Amoonguss, King Gambit, Fluttermane are the leads here in your game 3 for both of these trainers. Once again, you're putting this King Gambit in a weird pin, but then you are committing your Terastallization for Baxcalibur on turn 1.
I think if I'm Joe in this spot, King Gambit can just be Assurance fodder. It can just do extra damage. I don't care. You could be Ice type, you could be a Water type, whatever you want to do. I'm going to try to do double damage with Assurance and save your Terastallization for later on in the game. If he does want to commit it this early, then you are stuck essentially at no point that King Gambit and Baxcalibur are on the field together can you attack because he has the Ice Shard into your Terra Flying. So if you commit it this early, you have to have a way to deal with this Terra Water Baxcalibur.
Yep, Baxcalibur, Terra terastallizing on turn 1 here. We saw this do this pretty much mid-game in game 2, but a strong start here. A Shadow Ball, though, targeting down into that Amoonguss. Looks like that's Joe's priority. It does over 50%. Again, we saw this with the berry. It does bring it back really close to about 3/4 of its HP. King Gambit not moving first because this Icicle Spear targeted down into what was hopefully a flying type terastallization, but not going to happen this turn. Instead, like you said, definitely feeling like it's going to be insurance fodder here. Assurance fodder, not insurance. But instead, that 5 hits does not do nearly as much from a lack of terastallization, but Spore coming out into that Flutter Mane. The Assurance did a nice chunk of damage as well, but not enough to knock out.
That Citrus Berry was absolutely calculated for Fiona because Shadow Ball just barely did enough to activate it, just barely did over 50%. Eat your Citrus Berry, and then Assurance was not enough to pick up the KO onto Amoonguss. So now you still have Amoonguss available to redirect attacks into that slot. This could be pretty dangerous if Iron Bundle takes a lot of unnecessary damage, but you would expect that since Flutter Mane was asleep, maybe he wouldn't target that slot to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Amoonguss, though, wants to regain some of its HP thanks to that regenerator. Ting Lu switching in. A great call to have for next turn when Iron Bundle cannot put on the pressure that it wants to with something like a Freeze Dry. Icicle Spear targeting down into that Iron Bundle, though. It is not going to do nearly as much damage as that Glaive Rush had done, but this plus a Glaive Rush may be enough to get that knockout.
Yeah, we saw the Glaive Rush brought Iron Bundle down to about 10% of its HP the previous turn. So this Iron Head goes into Ting Lu on the switch in. It's like an okay amount of damage, but would at the next point a Freeze Dry and Assurance be enough for the knockout into either of these Pokemon? I don't know because of Ting Lu.
Here's my thought. If you're Joe, do you switch out the Iron Bundle, switch in the Flutter Mane, predicting a Glaive Rush, and then having that Fairy typing negate the Dragon type attack? Is a play I could see Joe making. It's a really tough call, but the fact of the matter is that Joe probably knows that Iron Bundle would get knocked out, and then you've put Fiona at a bit of a disadvantage. You get your Flutter Mane back in for what would basically be free, but then do you double target into that Iron Bundle with something like a Heavy Slam to cover that? Freeze Dry, though, into the Baxcalibur brings it down to 50% of its HP. It gets the freeze! The freeze is absolutely huge here. Baxcalibur is not going to be able to go for any damage. It stays frozen this turn. No thaw right out of the gate. King Gambit going for the Assurance into the Baxcalibur. It's enough to get the knockout. Baxcalibur not going to be able to do the damage that it needs to get this match going for Fiona. It's probably Stomping Tantrum. Now is when you get into, sorry to say it, Fissure.
Well, King Gambit is really low, but Lady Luck has switched sides and is finally benefiting Joe on stream in Top Cut with that Freeze Dry freeze. Not only that's the big part about it, but by not thawing. That's the kind of, we saw that yesterday. You get frozen, but then you thaw, so kind of no harm, no foul. No, absolutely harm, absolutely foul from that Freeze Dry, stopping the Terra. Fiona has lost her Terra in this game from Baxcalibur. It's down to Ting Lu and Amoonguss, who don't do too much damage on their own. Another Stomping Tantrum would be enough to hit the King Gambit. But now you can terastallize because there is no Ice type on the other side with Ice Shard as your flying type. Or as a flying type King Gambit, I should say. So that would be kind of interesting since King Gambit is already so low to lock in the terastallization, and there it is.
Yep, Joe locking in that terastallization here, that Terra flying, a much safer call without something like that Baxcalibur to hit you for super effective damage, especially in the face of an Amoonguss, because we see in the back that it's Gyarados, and that does not want to come in at any point if it doesn't have to. Icy Wind gonna slow these guys both down a good amount, super effective on both of these Pokemon as well, is just going to make things move even slower than maybe that King Gambit, who can get that Assurance off before they can move. Amoonguss is knocked out here for Fiona, losing that support system of the sleep that it definitely needed, and Stomping Tantrum into the Terra flying is not going to hit that King Gambit.
Joe tempting fate with that Icy Wind because 5% of the time he doesn't get the hit, it misses, and you don't have the double boost to your Assurance. Obviously, Amoonguss was low enough that it might have been able to get it without the boost, but now King Gambit is even stronger thanks to its Defiant, and Joe and his trusty King Gambit have found a way here, Maeve.
They are going to be moving on to the finals. Joe's second finals in a week here. Really incredible play by both him and Fiona. Amazing job from both of these trainers. Huge, great sportsmanship.